When you sign Hall and Nash in 1996, and they come in, they do the NWO angle, Vince McMahon and WWF decide to sue you for gimmick infringement or whatever it is for their characters, because Scott Hall was acting too much like Razor Ramon, etc. Do you remember how you found out about that, and did you think that they had a chance to sort of win that?
Well, I found out about it the minute Vince McMahon filed a complaint and we got served a legal notice. I got a call immediately from Turner Legal advising me that we were being sued for trademark infringement. I don't know how many of you ever watched Scott Hall when he was in WCW. It was quite a while ago. Like most anybody in this room other than me and two other people probably weren't even alive at that point. But Scott Hall wrestled in WCW as the Diamond Stud. Remember that? Had the little curly Q, had the toothpick, would throw it at the camera whenever he made his entrance. Well, when we got sued, one of the things that initially we were made aware of is Vince was claiming because Scott Hall had a curly Q and was not coming out with a toothpick, just like he did with the Razor Ramon character, because the Razor Ramon character stole the toothpick gimmick from the Diamond Stud, but Vince pretended he came up with that. That was one of the things that allowed Vince McMahon to win that lawsuit. Turner had to settle because Turner lawyers were so lazy and incompetent, they didn't even bother and go back and go, wait a minute, he was using that toothpick and had that hairstyle before he went to WWE. We should be suing you.
Lots of research.
But they didn't do it. And Turner, because at the time Turner didn't like lawsuits. They had a rule, and not a rule, but they had a policy that said if a lawsuit was less than $100,000 in claims, just pay it off. Like you could say, oh, I was walking through the hall and I slipped and fell on a banana peel and hit my head on a picture of somebody, and you could sue them from $999,000, or yeah, 100,000, 900, yeah, $99,999. They would just write you a check. They just hated lawsuits.
How many times do you do it?
How many times did I do it? How many times did I fall on my head? No, I never sued. I don't like suing people. I'm the opposite of that. I'm not a litigious person. But Turner didn't like lawsuits, so they settled. But I found out early on, and I was hoping we would win it. We should have won that. To be honest about it, we should have won that. If we would have had a decent legal team behind us, we would have, but we didn't. And Vince was very aggressive. Very aggressive.
So when this is happening, he's suing you for that, and you know that you guys came up with it first back in the day. Is that adding any sort of gusto or enthusiasm for you to really nail him more?
Yeah. Because I like to fight. I mean, and not so much anymore as I've gotten older, but at that period of time, given a choice between finding an easy way out of a situation and fighting my way through a situation, I would have preferred to fight. I just like to fight. I've always liked to fight, and it just got me hotter, pissed me off more, and made me more determined to outperform him and to beat him.
And because obviously Mike Tyson was one of the big things that turned WWF around, that WrestleMania 14 match, and there's always stories about you guys trying to get Tyson beforehand. Talk a little bit about the chance to get Mike Tyson, and did you foresee that for what it would become with them?
What's funny, Kenny, is I never had a conversation with Mike Tyson. I never had a conversation with Mike Tyson's agent. I never had a conversation with Mike Tyson's lawyer. I think that came from our buddy Dave Meltzer. Don't make me reach for my phone now. No, I don't know where that came from, but Mike Tyson, I mean, I admired Mike Tyson as an athlete, as a boxer. I've always been a fan of boxing since Muhammad Ali when I was a little kid. I remember about 1964 or 5 sitting in my home in Detroit with my father listening to Cassius Clay in one of his first fights. But we couldn't get it on television, but we could hear it on the radio. You know, it seems like a million years ago. But no, I had never had any conversations at all with Mike Tyson. The other side of that story is while Vince McMahon and Mike Tyson were negotiating, I wasn't aware of it. I got a phone call from a friend of mine by the name of, well, he worked for me, actually. His name was Zane Breslov. Zane Breslov was in charge of our live event side of our business in WCW. And Zane Breslov used to work at the WWF, and then he came to work for WCW. And Zane still had a lot of really good friends at high levels inside of WWF. And I was down in Florida. I was taking flying lessons. I was getting ready to get what they call your check ride, to get your private pilot's license. I was down in Florida at the time, and I was up flying, and I landed my plane, and I got a call from Zane Breslov. And Zane said, Eric, you're never going to believe what WWF is doing. And at the time, I was beating the shit out of them. I mean, I didn't care. I was arrogant. And I said, okay, Zane, what are they doing now? They're bringing in Mike Tyson to shoot an angle with Steve Austin and Vince McMahon. That's going to leave a mark. That's going to hurt. I knew as soon as I heard that we were in for a real fight at that point.
When Vince ended up buying WCW in the end, we know the story. You were going to buy it. When you realized there was no TV and you backed away from the idea, did it matter to you that Vince was the one that bought it? Either way,
no, because no. Short answer is no. It was about 6 or 8 months, from the time that we started negotiating to purchase WCW. It's called due diligence is the legal term, where you have to go through all the contracts and negotiate and make sure everything is in order. That took about 6 months, 4 to 6 months, I think, is what it took. And at that point, it was announced in the paper, the Wall Street Journal, that we were buying WCW from Turner Broadcasting. So we were making plans. We were on our way. We had ideas about what we were going to do. And I'll never forget this. I had taken my wife, Lori, and our 2 kids, and they each were able to bring a friend, and we took them to Hawaii because I knew that once that deal closed and we actually took over WCW, it might be 2 or 3 years before I would get a vacation. I knew how much work was ahead of us. So I thought, while we have the time, I'm going to take my family to Hawaii and have a beautiful vacation because we may not be able to do this for a while. So Lori and I and the kids were in Hawaii, and I got a call from my then business partner, a guy by the name of Brian Badal. And I don't know where I was when he called me, but he called me. He says, Eric, it's done. I went, yeah. I'm thinking the deal's done. Like it's closed. I said, great, Brian. Awesome. Can't wait to get back, get to work. He said, no, Eric, I mean, the deal is done. It's over. I know, Brian. I can't want 4 more days in Hawaii, man. I'm going to wash the sand out of the crack of my ass, finish this Mai Tai, and I'll be there before you know it. No, Eric, the deal collapsed. It's not going to happen. And it sunk into me. And when that happened, it probably took a couple days, to be honest. It didn't immediately happen. But I just turned my back on it all. It's like wrestling never happened in my life. I knew I had no other choice but to reinvent myself and apply myself to do other things because wrestling was no longer an option. And I was so, I don't even want to say angry, frustrated and disillusioned that I didn't want to have anything to do with wrestling anymore. I wanted to carve a new path for myself. So I literally turned my back on it. When I heard Vince bought it, it It just didn't matter to me. I could care less at that point.
Was part of that because you knew that if you sort of really thought about it, it would be a sort of a blow. That not that he got it, but just the way it ended up. Was it kind of a coping mechanism to kind of go, I'm going to put this. Nothing good's going to come of me trying to think about this and how it.
No, I just think it's my nature. It's like once I realize something is over, it's just over. And dwelling on it or being angry about it or holding on to it or the emotions that it creates, it's just. In my life, I've had different relationships that once it's over, it's over. There's no hanging on to anything. And that's kind of the way I felt about WCW at that point. I just pretended it didn't happen.
So before you go to WWE in 2002, after the audition in 1990, were you and Vince ever in the same room? Did you ever have an interaction together in those 12 years?
The only interaction we ever had was outside the production studio in 1991 when I did that audition, and he came out and thanked me for doing the audition. That was the only conversation, and it was very short. It maybe lasted 20 seconds. It was very superficial, very short.
So, and obviously, famously, Jim Ross called you in 2001 in the summer and sort of, in your words, sort of half-assed offered you the idea of coming in to WWF. Do you think, in hindsight now, because of how difficult that whole thing was, that if you had come in then, do you think it would have worked?
Yes. Yeah. And it's unfortunate. There was a couple things. One is, just admittedly, I had gained a lot of weight. I was eating and drinking like it was an athletic event. And I was not in any kind of television shape, to be very honest. And Jim called me, I don't remember what the exact dates were, but it was right around the 4th of July. And my family, my wife, my kids, my brother, my sister, a lot of my friends, our friends, come out to our home in Wyoming because we live right outside of Yellowstone National Park. It's kind of a cool place to come and spend time. But in the summertime, we had a little bit, it was kind of an informal tradition. My wife's birthday is on the 4th of July. My father passed away on the 4th of July. It's the 4th of July, which is a big holiday. And in Wyoming, especially, it's a very patriotic community. It's kind of a fun thing. There's a big parade, and it's just very cool. So I had friends and family coming in from all over the United States were coming to visit us over the 4th of July. Well, I get a call from Jim Ross on the 2nd of July. And Jim, at the time, Jim and I are very good friends now. We have a lot of respect for each other and affection for each other. But at that time, not so much. And Jim was in charge of talent relations. And I remember Jim called me up. He goes, "Oh, Eric, boss would like to know if you're maybe willing to come in and do some TV on Monday, like 3 days from then." And I've got friends and family coming in. I said, "Well, Jim, what do you have in mind?" "Oh, I don't, we haven't quite figured that out yet. We just want to get you here, kind of see how everybody gets along." He was dancing around. He didn't want to tell me that they wanted to bring me in to head up the invasion angle, to be a part of the NWL thing. He danced around it. He couldn't tell me anything. Didn't offer me a contract. Didn't even discuss money. He just wanted to know if I'd get on a plane and, for no reason, come on out and talk to Vince. And because I was insecure about the way I looked, because I knew I was way overweight, and because I had friends and family coming in from out of town that already made plans and spent a lot of money to do it, I said, "I don't think so. I'm good. Thanks for the offer." Tell Vince I said hi. But yes, do I think it would have worked? Yes, it would have worked.